Hey guys, this is the life of a $100 million entrepreneur in summary. So I'm a $100 million entrepreneur. You could call me a $70 million entrepreneur. You could even call my bottom line somewhere around like 25 million. You know, bottom line. 45 million bottom line is more like it, but $100 million entrepreneur I think is fair to call me. You could even call me a $1 billion entrepreneur. Depends who's asking, depends who's looking. If Jeff Bezos wanted to invest in my company, you could trust and believe he would give me the cool 2 billion for my CEO ship, and for my company, he would give me the 2 billion. You know, but to the average investor who only has, a couple million, I might be able to pull equity and sell, the stake that I'm willing to sell in my company for like 100 million, man. That's understanding that I'll always own at least 33% of my company. So I could sell though, 66% for 100 million, and I'll be leaving behind at least 33% of my company for my kids. So it's very important for me, especially to make this video, because I want to talk about what it takes to be a $100 million entrepreneur, and what I've had to do to get here, and my humble beginnings. I did not enter the game thinking that I was going to make $100 million at 30 years old. I'm 30 years old, not 31 and not 29, but 30. You know, um, you know, I started my first business when I was 3 years old. I was, right when I really understood the concept of money. I knew I wanted to make a lot of money, and I knew that my grandfather told me about owning a business. That, like, he told me that if you want to make the most money, you have to own your own business. So it was a very easy decision for me that that's what I wanted to do with my life from that day forward. And, as I got older, the dream faded in and out from my general consciousness. But I hit the streets, hit the ground running at age 19, straight out of high school, enrolled in college, okay? Because I didn't have no fucking money to start a business. It turns out 2 months later, less than 6 months into being enrolled in college, I started my own business. You know, so pretty much, when I did that, my family freaked out. They thought that I had lost my mind. They encouraged me to stay in college, but I knew what I wanted to do with my life from day one, and they didn't know that this is what I've always wanted to do. Maybe so, that it's not the only thing I fucking care about in my life, and my desire is like, this is what I do for my life. It's pretty much that simple. As owning businesses, is this pretty much is just what I do for my life. There's no other option. Is like, I would not choose anything else. I wouldn't choose anything else. I maybe have better options available to be maybe like just a regular motherfucker that's not famous and stuff. Fame can be a motherfucker, but this is the life I love. This is the life I choose. There's things that could provide a better life for me, but this is the life that I ultimately choose. So given all of that, this is what I am. So, yeah, my life started my first business when I was 3 years old. Started selling dope when I was 14 because in my mind, I couldn't legally form a business with the state because my parents wouldn't sign the paperwork for me. And I couldn't go to my parents and be like, man, if you don't sign this tax paperwork, I got to go sell dope. And I had to do what I had to do to make money and stuff. So I was selling dope, and learned a lot about business back then. Crime don't pay. Crime don't pay. If you want to become Pablo Escobar, you got to follow the rules to a T. The laws of God, selling dope, there's no such thing as shady business if you want to get ahead. Selling dope is one of the craziest businesses and one of the best businesses to learn in because the stakes are high. No pun intended, the stakes are high. You could wind up dead. You could wind up someone kills you or robs you or there's criminal activity. But basically, me and my friends were smoking dope and we decided to sell dope to support our habit, and it was my idea to do that. We're smoking it. I said, why don't we sell this shit? Let's start selling this shit. We can make money. That's what my friends learned, that Mike's all about his money. More so than my mother ever did. My mother still thinks I'm just a faker, that I'm just pretending. Is like, this is how I make money. I'm a businessman. That's how I make my money. Yeah, I'm passionate about the sport of business. I don't care to be the best. I'll be the best, but I don't care to be the best. So pretty much, this is pretty much what I do with my life. I work all day. It's hustle and grind season all day, every day, and I get disability too. So I have to, when you get disability, it's easy to just kind of sit back and relax and think like, oh, okay, but I don't have that added pressure. That's what's going to make me a great business person is I don't have that added pressure of like, oh, it's do or die. This is how I got to pay my bills. It's like, I'll make some of the most money in the world by, basically being just stay calm under pressure. Calm under pressure. That's what my disability check's really all about. When I lose my disability, or if I lose my disability, seeing as if I am disabled, I can always go back on. You see, I have like bipolar schizophrenia from years of smoking dope as a teenager. When my brain was developing to become like a human being, and then now I'm a medication dependent schizophrenic. So don't do drugs, kids. Don't do drugs. And overall, I'm just trying to live my best life. You know, uh, I think that I truly believe, and I know in my heart that God will not mind that wanting the best for yourself. There's nothing wrong with wanting the best for yourself. You know. Okay, let me tell you guys my story of how I started my first business full time. It was February of 2015 when I was in my second semester in college. When it dawned on me that I had the money to start my own business, have the money to start my own business, and, you know, so that's what I did. I started my business, dropped out of college, got certified in personal training and sports nutrition, and that's what I did for my first business. You know, I committed to a journey to become the best personal trainer that I could possibly be, and that's what I'm still trying to do. When I'm older, I want to create a personal training app, you know, like the best personal training app that one person can create, you know, through pure experience and testing all the bullshit that people talk about on the internet, people that are taking steroids, sifting through all the bullshit and creating the best app for every form of fitness is my goal. Like by the time I die, you know, to get into the nitty gritties, you know, is like one thing I won't have the time to do is to understand every science and every complexity. But by the time I die, I will have a simple formula to achieve anything you want in fitness, bodybuilding, powerlifting, and martial arts, mixed martial arts or boxing or jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai. I will have an app for that. So, you know, evolving more throughout the years in business, you know, I went through like a 10-year journey of discovery after that because I got kicked out of the house, you know, and I couldn't move back in with my parents, so I had my disability check though. So I knew like I have the time to study. So that's what I started doing. I started reading a bunch of books, studying videos, audio books, 12 hours a day of studying. Maybe 10 hours a day, okay, because I had to cook and clean and stuff like that, but it was more or less like 10 hours a day of pure like input into my studies, you know, and I think education is something that no one can take from you. You know, education is something that no one can take from you. All the shit I learned over these years. But I would study sometimes for like 1,000 hours just to come across like one or two ideas that would really transform things for me. You know, and so then entering into age about 27, I started stacking up assets preparing for a life in business, domain names, okay, web hosting, okay, just anything I could get my hands on to do what I want to do, which is to own an umbrella company. You know, I learned about like work optimization, you know, optimizing for input, you know, and not a second is wasted throughout my day. Not one single second is wasted throughout my day. Even as I'm laying down to sleep at night, I have like audiobooks on. I'm always making money, always making money, always like increasing the value of myself. Even as I make this video, seems like I'm not doing nothing, but I'm increasing my online presence. Seems to me like I'm not doing nothing compared to the work that I'm normally doing on my business. I got a sore tooth in the back of my mouth. It's killing me, but I love the pain, you know. It's just tooth pain, you know. A constant stream of tooth pain is not what I wanted today, but you know, so, yeah, ultimately in life, you know, I've reached a point now since age 27 where I'm pretty stacked with assets and like valuable, like, things for my business and for my life in general. You know, got a lot of valuable people in my life, you know, great support system. I got people that prepare me like healthy meals every day, like 3 healthy meals with fruit and vegetables and stuff. I found myself in government funded housing for people who are medication dependent and for people who have maybe medical problems and need that sort of assistance, sort of like a nursing home, but more independent living for like younger people. I got a guy who lives with me. He's 64, you know, and he's 64 and he lives here. You know, he can walk and talk and move around. He's not like nursing home ready, you know, and most of the people that I've encountered in these sort of houses, I've lived in about 3 or 4 of them over the years, you know, are like more so like younger people that maybe are bipolar, or some of them are like, most of them are like probably like middle-aged or older, but a lot of them are like even younger people, you know, who are like bipolar and can't function in society. I'm a medication dependent schizophrenic, but when I'm on medication, I'm highly functionable. So, you know, it's like, so, yeah, but, leading up to this point, I just been stacking up assets, domain names, trademarks, business bank accounts, employer identification numbers, like getting ready to launch my umbrella company. And right now I'm learning coding, pretty much. So that's not my whole story. It's just my story condensed into about 20 minutes with a little bit of advice and a little bit of my lifestyle. You know, how I've been living. How I've been living is, it's been a hard 10 years. Ever since I got kicked out of the house. When I dropped out of college, they kicked me out of the house within the same year. You know, and that's when I really needed them the most. You know, I was building my business and I started making like good money in Amazon business. I decided to take my business to even the next level. You know, And ultimately, this journey of discovery, the discovery of God, discovery of life, and business is how I do that. I want to reach a point where like to just be like the best, one of the best at what I do, or the best, So I'd probably opt to be more so like one of the best, because I am just a one-man show over here. So someone who has like a giant team behind them, if I could find myself in like the number one spot of the best business in the world for like some period of time, that would be really awesome. So that's my prayer right now. Optimize for heaven and optimize for business and my wife. Like when I get married and my kids, Obviously my wife is an individual. She's a person too, so I can't like own her, which is convenient too, because I also care about my kids. So if I was truly like optimized, for anything, it would be business, and then whenever I'm bored on business, I'll play a little bit of video games, for maybe like 15 minutes a day, and that's a break enough for me, So, anyways, I'll talk to you guys later. That's my story. In the next 5 years, once I learn how to code real good, once I learn how to code real good, gonna be launching business after business after business after business. My goal when I die is to have over 50 businesses in my catalog and to have a business in every meaningful category. So